Achievements. Love them or hate them, they're here to stay in the mainstream gaming space. I'm in the camp and love them. I feel they help me discover different ways to tackle problems in games that I wouldn't have ever tried, or aim for secret endings which I would have just missed if that small digital dopamine hit wasn't pulling at my grey matter. Sadly, I find a lot of games don't hit the same without them anymore. I'm not talking about retro, even though you can actually add achievements to older games these days with emulators. A lot of them support retroachievements.org. I'm mainly talking about the Switch here. While I still enjoy playing games on Nintendo platforms, it's not the same as having a little digital history of what you've accomplished with a game. Back in the PS2 era, I was starting to fall out of love with gaming. I was just finding other things to do to take up my time, mainly drinking with friends. But I never stopped buying or playing video games, it was just very limited. I would put a game on and find I was bored very quickly, and soon shut it off. This was until the Xbox 360 was released. This console and its achievement system just got its nails into me. I picked one up on launch day, and played Perfect Dark and Project Gotham 3 with friends all night. Strangely, going into this, I had no idea of the achievement system, and when something popped up, I was just a little curious. This is when I discovered outside of the game there were these little extra challenges that you could unlock to show off to your friends. I was even more surprised to find out this was in all games, and they worked as a sort of digital trophy case for showing off what you've accomplished in every game. Just in case you're unaware of what I'm talking about, I'll quickly explain it. Not that I imagine you'd be watching this without any kind of prior knowledge. Anyway, every game is allocated 1000 G or 1000 Gamerscore. This is broken down into individual achievements with varying scores which make up that 1000. When you unlock one of these, it is added to your gamertag, which other people can see and check your progress and accomplishments in said game. This score from every game is added together to create your overall gamerscore. Very simple really. Xbox was actually the first console to adopt a system like this, but PlayStation followed suit not long after with its trophy system, and other platforms such as Steam added their own achievements. Nintendo is the only one still doing their thing and not getting on board, which of course they are, it's Nintendo. You don't expect anything else. I would love to see a system implemented in their games one day, but only time will tell. I can't see it happening though. But that's enough of this babble out the way. What is this video about? Well, I realised I was closing in on a very specific milestone, the 1 million Gamerscore to be exact. I wanted to document my experience getting the final 15k, the only way that it counts, with Xbox 360 games alone, in 2024. You see, when this system was introduced, achievements were that, achievements. Most of them took time and skill. Nowadays, both Xbox and PlayStation are filled to the brim with super cheap 20-minute completions that can net you up to 5,000 Gamerscore per game or a platinum trophy. I feel this makes a mockery of the system. Don't get me wrong, there were always easier completions on Xbox 360, as not all games are created equal when it comes to difficulty, and a lot of kids games could be used to boost your score, but you'd still have to sink maybe 10 hours into it. There were a couple of outliers, but I won't really talk about them that much in this video, because I've already done them. I can't say I'm not guilty of playing some of these Xbox One and Series X games that take minutes, and I'll explain why in a bit, but I have tried to steer clear of these whenever possible. So when it comes to the challenge, the only rule is the achievements must be earned playing it on an Xbox 360. I've decided to make this a little harder for myself with a couple of factors though. I've recently spoken in depth about 360 games on this channel, so I wanted to try and only play games where possible that I haven't discussed on another video. Every month I also do these things called True Achievement Medals over on the website trueachievements.com. This is an achievement scanning and tracking website. Each month they set 3 challenges, which have a bronze, silver and gold requirement. I'm currently on a streak of beating every challenge that's been set to date, and I don't want to break that. So I'll also have to take these challenges into consideration while playing. This is where I would usually use some of that really cheap easy gamer score to knock out some of these medals if I was running out of time. Or you know, if they wanted me to play genres that I'm not that into. Yeah, I'm looking at you, sports. I also chose to stick to retail released discs only, but these could be from any region. So anyway, let's begin with what I played, why I played it, and how much score I was able to get out of each game to total that 15,000 needed to hit that glorious 1 million gamer score. Up first was The Wolf Among Us. This is part of the Telltale series of games. These play more like a choose-your-own-adventure book. Not a lot of gameplay other than looking for a few objects, dialogue choices, and quick-time events. I wanted to be able to complete this challenge as quickly as possible, not make it super difficult. It's all about me wanting to know how quickly I could obtain the 15k on the Xbox 360, compared to the hour I could have done it in on the Xbox Series X. Although that's a very simplified version of how the game plays, it's really one people shouldn't write off. The story is fantastic and my favourite of all the games from the Telltale series. Yes, I do think it's better than The Walking Dead. The achievements for this one aren't difficult at all. It's simply play through the game and go back and replay a few chapters to make some different choices to fill up the entries in the Book of Fables. I did, however, find a lot of technical issues with this version of the game, which weren't present in the Xbox One version when I played it years ago. These included the game freezing when trying to reload save files, audio sync issues, large amounts of stuttering, and missed button presses due to lag. But even with all this, I still had a blast playing through this one again. The game was originally put out on the Xbox Live Arcade as an episodic title, so unlike the other version of the game available on the Xbox One, the 360 version only has 500 Gamerscore available. Although this was the disc version, they kept the score the same as its now unavailable downloadable counterpart. From The Wolf Among Us, I was able to net the entire 500 Gamerscore though, knocking the required target down to 14,500. Still a long way off the million, and this was after about 8 hours of play. Spoiler alert, this isn't the last time we're going to see a game from the Telltale line of games on this list. Second up on the list of games to play is a bit of a curveball. I'm a big fan of rhythm games, and recently finished the main game of DJ Max Respect V on the Xbox Series X, so I was itching for something similar. So I fired up Dancing Stage Universe 2, also known as Dance Dance Universe 2 in the States. I thought to myself, a dance mat game played with a regular controller? That would do it. And surprisingly it worked. Not surprised that the controller worked, I knew it would. I was surprised it scratched the itch. I do have the dance mat to play this with, but after a quick go, I realised my fat ass jumping about was shaking all the games in the game room, and something was going to get broken. These types of games are notoriously hard for achievements, so I was just aiming to get what I could out of it. I do believe I could get the 1000G with a bit more time, but I was able to scrape a respectable 860G from the game in about 20 hours. To get this score, I had to clear all the songs with a D grade or higher, in the game's equivalent to free play mode. I also completed the quest mode, and completed the first 3 tiers of the challenge mode. Although completing the songs with the D rank doesn't sound too hard, a lot of them need to be unlocked in the quest mode. And to hit the scores required to make it through this game, you need to be playing at least on hard or higher. There are a few modifiers you can turn on to help with certain challenges during the quest mode. Things like make every note a held note to help you quickly build certain note type combos, but again it's still very skill dependent. When I go back to this game to finish it off, I'm going to have to bring my A game, as I still need to beat all the challenges for 7 levels of incremental difficulty. The last one's called Apocalyptic Challenges. The name alone puts me off. Overall, this is a pretty solid dance mat game. I imagine you would get more out of it using the dance mat peripheral itself, but then again, as I said, this is about getting through the challenge as quick as possible. I know some of these choices are going to sound weird, but I have played and beat a lot of 360 games in my time, and while I'm doing this challenge, I'm pretty much down to the dregs of the Xbox 360 library. With the 860G earned from Dancing Stage Universe 2, the required total was down to 13,640. At least we're past that first 1000G. Third up was another game that most people would usually pass by and not look at twice on the shelf. The game in question is Disney's Brave. Of all things, it plays like a cross between a twin-stick shooter and a platformer. If you want to just play through the game for fun, it's most likely an easy, casual little romp. But if you want that sweet, sweet gamer score, you're going to have to play on maximum difficulty, known as Brave difficulty. It even specifies doing this without changing the difficulty, so there's no workaround to this for anyone hoping for it. Don't let this put you off though, there are a few trickier boss encounters, but the majority of the game is a piece of cake. And if you just stay back and shoot from a distance, you'll have no problems. The other achievements to be aware of is collecting all the weapons throughout the game, and a ton of other collectible items. The rest is just for grinding out kills with certain charm weapons, and acquiring currency. The in-game money is used to buy upgrades for your character and weapons. The achievement for buying all these will most likely be your last one, or close to last one at least. It's a decently long grind for this style of game. Trust me, you'll get bored of running the first level over and over. From this I was able to snag the first full 1000G for the challenge. I'm still annoyed I didn't realise that Wolf Among Us was only 500 until I started playing it. This is another game I would actually recommend to people who are looking for something a little different. Played on the 360, the frame rate can get a little sluggish when the battles get hectic, but luckily this one's backwards compatible with the Xbox Series consoles, and I imagine it'd be a much smoother experience on there. It was also games with gold once, so you may just have it sitting in your library already. The game takes roughly 8 hours to finish, so it's not too much of an investment for a nice 1000G boost to your gamerscore. After grabbing the 1000G from this game, the new total required was down to 12,640. This is where them true achievement medals I mentioned earlier that I do every month started to give me a little bit of trouble. During this month, one of the challenges was to get 1000G in sports games or action games. Sadly, I've played most of the action games I own on the 360, so it left me with the genre I hate the most to snag achievements on: sports. Fucking sports. Also, talking of medals, this might deserve one for being one of the worst looking games on 360. I'm struggling to think of something that looks worse, to be honest with you. So when this medal came up, I had a look through my collection and found this little American exclusive title called Backyard Sports Backyard Football 2010. This was always known to be one of the very easy games you could do back in the 360 era. Luckily I haven't long picked this one up, and therefore I'd never played it. This was simply because it took me too long to find anywhere in the UK. It didn't seem like it was worth importing with the fees. Let's put it this way. This would be a super easy completion if you had any idea how to play American football or what any of the terminology used actually meant. I was flying blind on this one. I thought I'd just be able to work it out by playing. I thought it must be possible to work out what rushing, TD rushes and sacking were. I was wrong. I played this for about 2 hours and unlocked one achievement for scoring touchdowns. I'm ashamed to say I had to resort to a guide on how to beat this. Even with the guides I was still a little confused, but I was able to finish off the remainder of the achievements in about an hour and a half. So a game which was notorious for being one of the few games on 360 that you could beat in around half an hour took me almost 4 hours. Yes, you can point and laugh at me. I don't think I'll ever understand this sport. I don't even know all the rules of English football, so I have no chance of any of these weirder, more complex sports. Even though I hated every second of this game, I did scrape the 1000G, and that brought the total needed down to 11,640G. I was glad to see the back of this one. Felt like I was playing it for a millennia. Whilst I had the American console hooked up, I thought I would play another US exclusive, this time being NASCAR Unleashed. Over here in the UK we only ever got 2 of the NASCAR games on the 360, those being 08 and 09. Which is odd, as I could have seen this arcade style game selling better than any of the sim versions. I was also shocked to find out this game had actual tracks to race on. I mean ones that aren't just a big oval. Although it's not a polished game or anything, and people shouldn't be running out to grab it, I did actually have a good amount of fun with this. When you wreck other cars, they become your rival, and this causes them to get more aggressive towards you. Having a big pack of cars gunning for you at once can be pretty fun. There was a few cheap moments though where the AI would come up fast behind you and wreck you just before the finish line, but that's expected in this type of game. Achievement wise, it's also pretty straightforward. Beat the career mode, make rivals, score points in races, and do a little bit of split screen multiplayer. The scores in races are determined by things like drifting, drafting, wrecks and overtakes. Though if you're not keen on time trials, you do need to get a gold medal on all of them. These aren't really hard, just a couple will take a few goes. The toughest on the game, which took me the longest to finally pull off, was wreck your car across the finish line. Some people might get this by pure luck, but I just wasn't that lucky. To set it up, you have to severely damage your car and sit near the finish line, hoping someone crashes into you at full speed and does enough damage to actually wreck you and force you across the line. This must have taken me about 20 tries at 4 minutes a try. Luckily I was able to get this in the end, which meant I snagged the full 1000 Gamerscore from this game. Luckily again, it isn't a very long one, and it clocked in at only about 8 hours of playtime. The running total required was now sitting at 10,640. At this point I started to think it was going nice and smoothly, although it had taken me almost half a month up until now. You know, because of work and life, it just gets in the way, doesn't it? MorphX is where this challenge started to go downhill a bit. Well, more than a bit. Not only did I not get all the Gamerscore out of this game, it's the first game I didn't actually finish. This wasn't due to difficulty, it's down to it just being plain awful. It's a third-person hack-and-slash shooter affair, where your main character slowly transforms into some weird mutant. I couldn't keep up with the story because it was so boring. On top of that, if you're not using your alien vision power-up, the game is unbelievably dark, and there's no options to turn the brightness up on the game. I played this with max brightness on my TV, and I still couldn't see a thing most of the time. The darkness causes a bit more of a problem in that enemies randomly spawn. They can just appear behind you at any point, and the only way to locate them is to take a few hits and follow the gunfire. This is made even worse, as for some reason this third person, camera behind the character game, uses tank controls. So turning around quick either has to be done on the spot or in a wide circle. No, it's not as bad as say old survival horror games, as you can speed this up by swinging the camera around, but this coupled with the choppy frame rate during boss battles actually gave me serious motion sickness and made me have to stop playing as I needed to throw up. This is actually the only game that's ever done this. I do feel rough if I play too much VR, but not to this level. All the footage I've seen of this online is from the PC version, and that is so much more visible, and looks like it controls 1,000 times better than this, and runs smoother. This is a shame, as it does feel like there could be a good game in here somewhere. I do plan on going back to this and finishing it off at a later date, but it will have to be in small bursts to stop the vomit. Even though I didn't finish it, I did rack up 440G from it. These were mainly from finishing levels and killing the aliens with certain weapons. If you do want to go for the completion yourself, you need to take note that there are a lot of collectibles and you must beat every level without dying. To my knowledge, there is a workaround to reset your number of deaths on each level, but I never really looked into it. I wanted to finish the game first, before even thinking about the achievements. I think it's something to do with loading each level from the last checkpoint. You will also have to upgrade all your skills. This is easier said than done though, as it's not done using anything like currency. The collectibles you find are these little cocoons, which give you nodes that you can put into a grid to connect your skills together. This means you have to use your puzzle game skills to work out the best way to effectively link them all together with the limited links you're given. To be honest, I really like this feature and thought it was nice to see something out of the norm when it comes to an upgrade system. I don't actually recommend this one to anyone, but it does have its fans online. I gave it a fair shot though. I played the game for about 6 hours before throwing in the towel. With the measly 440 I clawed out this game before it sent me rushing to the toilet. The remaining total required to end the challenge was sitting at 10,200G. After the dark as hell Vomfest, which was MorphX, I was begging for some colour in my life, so I decided to pop in the Smurfs too. There it was. the colour I was missing in my life. Well, for the first set of levels at least. After that, the game starts to get a bit drab. It leaves the colourful nature aesthetic and replaces it with castles, snow and town levels. I was surprised to find out this game was made by WayForward, a studio who are usually known for their creative and interesting games, but this, well, it's just bland. It looks like some kind of mobile phone game shovelware. Absolutely nothing interesting about it. Run through a few mindless levels, fight an easy boss fight, rinse and repeat. I know it's designed for a younger audience, but when I was growing up I was playing things like Mario and Sonic. These were most definitely not mind-numbing games. Achievement-wise, it's also pretty straightforward. It just tasks you with beating all the levels, getting all the collectibles, and staying in this true blue mode, which happens when you collect enough of these blue blob things. You know you're in true blue mode when the horrible Smurf song starts up. You keep this going by killing enemies and collecting more blobs. It's thrilling. The collectibles are all pretty easy to find, but each Smurf has a different ability to help explore different parts of the levels. It's best to go for the ones you missed after you've beat the game, as you unlock the ability to switch to any Smurf at any time, giving me that kind of Lego game vibe. The hardest achievements we haven't spoken about yet. These are for beating all the bosses without taking any damage. These are all pretty simple and don't take more than 3 hits to kill, but it may take a few goes to learn the patterns, but they're all easily doable after you've beaten the game. You will need a second controller to finish a level with another player for an achievement though. Although I felt myself losing brain cells playing this, I was able to snag the full 1000G in about 6 hours. I recommend this one only to people who want the score. I wouldn't even give it as a gift to a kid for Christmas. The total to go after this blue nightmare was 9,200. We were down to the final 10k. I knew next to nothing about the Captain America game, other than it had been sat on my shelf for years and I'd heard whispers through the grapevine that it was quite fun. Well, what does it play like? The best comparison would be the first Batman Arkham game, but without the stealth. It plays out in a large, connected, walled-in environment that you find ways to open up and create shortcuts so you can return to them later in the game. It might be blasphemous, but maybe a bit like Bloodborne? Not that it plays like Bloodborne, I mean the way the world's interconnected, you kind of loop back on yourself. Yeah, that might be a bad comparison. The combat is also very similar, with the reversal moves and knocking people out while they're on the floor. You also get to throw your shield in a similar fashion to the Batarangs. I will say this isn't anywhere nearly as polished as the Batman games, but I did actually have a really good time with it. I actually wanted to get back from work and continue with this one. The story wasn't anything special, but the gameplay just kept me hooked. I even had a good time hunting for the collectibles. These weren't hard to find and I did the game without any guides. Just be thorough when you enter a new area and you should be fine. Again, the achievements were a pretty straightforward affair. Beat the game, find collectibles, and grind different kills. The only downside to the game is it also has challenge maps, a bit like Batman. These are luckily all super easy and a great way to farm kills, explosions and statues. So they are a bit of a double-edged sword really. Personally, I would have rather not had them at all. I find them padding. I never bothered to do them in the Batman games. This game also surprisingly has no missable achievements, which is definitely uncommon for this type of game. I was able to easily beat this game in around 10 hours, again earning the full 1000G, bringing the remaining total down to 8,200. Honestly, give this one a go. Hopefully it doesn't rise in price too much like some of the Marvel games. That's right, another game on this list called Brave. Sadly, Brave: A Warrior's Tale wasn't a hidden gem, unlike the Disney one. But then again, what quality was I expecting from a game with a butt plug on the front cover? This is a port of a PS2 game to the 360, and a lazy one at that. They changed the name of the game, most likely to trick people into thinking it was a new game in the franchise. I doubt this worked though, as if somebody had played this on the PS2, I don't think they would have been begging for a follow-up. Graphically, it was almost as ugly as Backyard Football, but this has more going on, so it can't pip that title. This is your standard low-budget PS2 era 3D platform game. Expect an infuriating camera, no real direction on where to go, and tons of bugs. This game is so buggy it includes game-breaking glitches that can cause you to restart the entire thing. If you save at the end of level 3 and don't keep playing for a while, the game will no longer allow you to progress. I also found replaying this mission through the level select causes a crash when trying to get back to the hub world. Luckily it didn't wipe my game. Other than that, the game isn't hard, it's just full of cheap deaths. There are a couple of skill-based achievements like flying through all the rings while on the back of an eagle, or not hitting any rocks while whitewater rafting, but other than that, it's just collect everything and complete the game. Sadly, this game is rather lacking when it comes to help. All the guides on true achievements for the collectibles have broken links to the videos. I did find a full playthrough on YouTube, but it wasn't best labelled, so I had to keep skipping about to work out where I was. To make this more annoying, you can't actually see the collectibles, you have to use your tracking sense to dig them up. You do know when they're nearby though, as you'll get a little prompt. Still doesn't make them easy to find. The strange thing about this game is it contains one of the largest value achievements you can unlock. For beating the game, you're awarded a whopping girt 500G. Seeing that made struggling through this glitch fest worth it. The only other 500G achievement I can think of is for beating all the scenarios in FIFA 06. I've never been able to do that, I'm dreadful at the game. Plus one of the goalkeepers is inhuman. Again, I wouldn't recommend this one to anyone. There are plenty of stories online of people encountering glitches, such as achievements not unlocking, not being able to pick up collectibles as they just don't appear, or the old faithful in the form of the wiped save rearing its ugly head. I did get the 1000G from this game. I did almost give up a few times though, as I thought the game had glitched out on me, but with a few resets it sorted itself out. The challenge was starting to take its toll on me a bit now. I was playing awful games for long periods of time, and I was starting to wonder why I was even doing this. I then realised the score had dropped down to 7,200 needed. I had reached the halfway. I couldn't give up now, even if I had just struggled through this abomination for around 10 hours. These times don't sound too bad for the games, but remember I was doing this for months, as soon as I finished work, and nothing else. I was already exhausted from the day, and I had to somehow come home and play stuff like this. I had to persevere, for no other reason than I just wanted to say I'd done it. By now I wanted to mix up the genre, and yet again, I chose poorly. I knew what this game was as I had popped it in my console before to unlock an achievement for one of those pesky true achievement medals, but other than that, I wasn't too aware of what I was getting myself into. Pimp My Ride isn't a game where you spend all your time doing up vehicles for customers. It likes to make you think it is, but it isn't. It's a game where you drive around in little open world areas, breaking parking meters, finding collectibles and crashing into cars. Each level of the game is broken down into 2 stages, the cash roam and the pimp phase. In the cash roam, you do all the things I've just mentioned. Doing all these things for some reason earn you money. You also have to locate a hidden dealer, do a quick time laden curb crawl, and these 2 big money mini games. One is Ghost Riding the Whip, where you walk next to your car and press the button prompts as they appear. The second is Hot Stepping, which is exactly the same, where you walk next to your car, but you only press one button as it rolls across the bottom of the screen like a rhythm game. You have to do every part of this phase perfectly before you move on to the pimp phase if you want to get the 1000G out of this. This is where you think the fun would start, but no, the pimp phase is worse. You're given a time limit and a list of dealers you need to reach. Each one of these gives you more time depending on the parts you buy, which means you just always buy the most expensive pieces. Sometimes your drive will be interrupted by an exhibit challenge. This is just where you drive to him for a part. If you found the hidden dealer in the previous step, he will randomly spawn, so you'll have to grab him too. Rinse and repeat both of these steps 16 times for all the different customers, and that's the game. The pimp phase is really easy to mess up, as you have to work out your own route. The issues come with the map having a lot of invisible walls, or just the shortcuts not being clear. This one's really hard to explain, and I doubt the footage is helping either, but it's up there as one of the worst games on the console. It's also not one I've seen in the wild for an incredibly long time, so if you're going for a full set, you might want to grab it if you see it. This completion took me close to 20 hours, but I did net the full 1000G. Sadly, I'd already got one of the achievements before this challenge, so that meant I could only knock 990G off the total, bringing the required goal down to 6,210. Then pesky true achievements medals got me playing this one. For a gold medal that month, I needed to unlock 15 achievements for my game which started and ended with the same letter. You might be thinking, Dead or Alive 5 Ultimate doesn't do that. Well, on the website, after the game got updated, it's called Dead or Alive 5 Final Round, so that counts. If you're unaware, Dead or Alive is a fighting game with some very bouncy physics. It's also a genre I'm awful at. I just don't have the skills to get that much out of this game, but I was able to claw a decent amount. Sadly, this was from doing all the simple stuff, such as creating an online lobby, saving a replay, finishing certain careers on easy, tutorials, looking at the move list, taking photos, and pulling off stage-specific actions. The footage for this one's going to be awful. I did a lot of this with 2 controllers just to cheese the points. I'm not proud of it, but I needed to get that medal out of the way. Somehow, with this cheap strategy, I was still able to get a respectable 580 Gamerscore from the game. I did want to work on playing the online matches, but I never found a single person playing. This small bit of playtime was only a couple of hours, but it was worth it, as it netted me the gold medal, and I dropped the overall score remaining down to 5,630. I guess I better get pestering my boosting buddies to get that online stuff done. Next up was SBK 11. Another medal that month was to earn an achievement in 9 games I had started before the month. Luckily a few others here had already carried over into this month, but it still left me with a good chunk to get. I used to really enjoy the SBK games, so I thought I would finish off the ones I had started. I wasn't a happy bunny when I booted this up to find that my save had been corrupted, and I needed to start again. So I just grabbed a quick 20G from winning a single player race at 100% length in the wet. This was enough to get it knocked off the list of 9 games I needed to play. Sadly, this measly 20G only knocked the overall score down to 5,610, but every little helps. That's what Tesco says anyway. With the last SBK game going tits up, I thought I'd give SBK 09 a shot at finishing. This was a bad idea. I was still salty about what happened with the save in the last game. I couldn't concentrate on it enough to try and finish this one off, so I grabbed what I could easily and decided to move on. I did somehow manage to get 275G, but this wasn't for anything interesting either. It was mainly for doing races on certain tracks, with certain riders or in different conditions, such as finish 10 races in a row without falling. Literally nothing much to say about this one. I also wouldn't recommend it. For some reason the handling in this game is awful. I've had no issues staying on the bike in any of the other SBK games, but this one's like you're always on ice. But a couple hundred G earned, chipped away a little bit, and dropped the remaining score to 5,335. Not too shabby for a couple of hours worth of play, is it? I was still having to play games that I had started before the month began for that stupid medal. So again, I decided to play my favourite genre, fighting. I hope you can hear the sarcasm in that. This time it was Samurai Showdown Sen, a game which I shelved pretty much because the music did my head in. Luckily for this one, I had already done all the online achievements, so I thought with a bit of struggling I'd be able to complete this one. All I had left to do was use the launch to slash move 50 and 100 times, beat 26 people in survival, win 1,000 matches, and complete the game with each character, on expert difficulty. How was I going to win with all the characters on the hardest difficulty of the game? By cheesing it, of course. I set the game to 1 round, 30 seconds, and chose the fighter Charlotte, and repeatedly mashed the B button. This causes her to do a very quick but weak stab. In 30 seconds you can usually land a hit, and the opponent will block the rest until the match times out, and then you get the win. This would be done up until the final fight, where I would swap out to the character I needed to finish it with. Here I would just keep trying until I won, mostly by spamming the special move for 1 hit, and then just blocking until the round ended. Luckily for me, this method was successful, and I won with the remaining 20 characters that I hadn't used before. Each character also comes with their own achievement. When this was done, I jumped into survival mode, and cheesed that too. This time by using a character called Draco. He's the only character with a gun, and you can just spam it at people and hopefully win. This still had a few sketchy times where I didn't think I'd make it through, but we got there in the end. Finally the 1,000 fights. I just sat there with 2 controllers and kept winning over and over. I think I needed about 600 or so fights to hit the 1,000, after doing everything else. But when this was done, I finally hit the 1,000 G in the game. Sadly, since I'd played this before, I was only able to use 595 of the score from this game, but that did chunk down the overall remaining to 4,740. Playing the games I'd started before was really slowing down this challenge, but I didn't want to fail my first TA medal. It took me roughly 12 hours to get what I did from this one, so it wasn't too bad. Again, I had to play another game I had already started before, so I decided to play Sonic All-Star Racing Transformed. The reason for this was I was able to work towards 2 medals at once, and it's just overall a great game. I don't think I'll ever see the completion on this one, as it's super difficult and kart racers aren't my strong point. But since it was in the console, I thought I'd snag what I could from it. I was able to scab a bit more than I thought I would. I got another 135 from this game in very little time. I obtained finishing first without being hit by a weapon, beating a staff ghost, pulling off a long drift as Sonic, 10 stunt combos in a single event, and earning my A license. There were a couple of others, but these are just more of the interesting ones. Even though this isn't one I recommend for achievements, I would tell everyone to go out and get a copy, as it's just a fantastic game. After this quick Sonic detour, the remaining score was 4,605. This was feeling like slow progress, but all progress is progress. That's what I kept telling myself anyway. You would have thought going into another awful vehicle-based game after Pimp My Ride that I would have learnt my lesson, but no, I still stuck Motorcycle Club into the console. Again, this is one I had played before, so I should have made a smarter decision, but it was seeming like I just wanted to torture myself. This is just your standard racing game, but it has a gimmick that you have 3 motorcycles at once, and you switch between the bikes on the fly as the terrain changes. This is done mid-race, so it's a bit weird to start with. Again, this is one that could have been a fun game with a little more time, but the 360 version runs terribly. The frame rate is choppy, the bikes are twitchy, and every time you lean, the camera does this disorientating movement. The game also suffers from some of the worst screen shake I've ever seen. Sometimes you also find that when you go to turn, it will feel like your controller is disconnected, and no matter what speed you're doing, you'll just slide into a wall with no control, or any ability to try and correct it. But I was determined to get another completion under my belt. So with this being a standard racing affair, all you have to do to finish it is win all the races, buy all the bikes, set a time on all the time trials, and earn a lot of credits. Apart from one weird achievement. The game wants you to unlock the last championship in the career mode in under 70 races. Sadly, when I went back into this, I didn't know how much I'd already done, and decided to do a second playthrough at the end to find the optimal path for the shortest number of races. This was a blessing in disguise, as not all tracks are created equal. Some of you will win every time, as the computer cannot change bike, and if there's a lot of off-road sections, they will just slow to a crawl. With this information, you know which tracks to avoid going into the achievement. I would have told you which ones they are, but I genuinely can't remember. The only achievement in the game I had any real trouble with was crossing the line 0.1 seconds ahead of someone. You don't have to be in first place for this, it's with any of the opponents. But the computer is so awful it's hard to stay in a pack that even crosses the line together. This took me way more attempts of just waiting at the line that I would like to admit. I was getting flashbacks of that NASCAR game all over again, just sitting on the line. Again, this is one you could unlock just by luck, but again I didn't get lucky with it. Even though I had started this before, I was still able to pull 565G from it, making it another overall completion, and lowering the remaining score to 4,040. This also popped me my gold medal for games I'd played before. It took me roughly 20 hours to finish off what I was missing on Motorcycle Club. With the 2 playthroughs, you could cut this down quite a bit. Finally, I had free reign on what I could play again. Now I was free, and I'd had enough of playing these awful games, I thought I'd give something a go that I'd heard very good things about. So I started the first game on the Zone of the Enders HD collection. How to describe this game? Well, it's like an aerial mech combat game, and I'm sad to say I didn't enjoy this one. It kept giving me flashbacks to Wartech Senko no Ronde, which is a one-on-one aerial mech fighting game that I spent what felt like an eternity getting 1000G on years ago. I am worried my hatred for that game spoilt this one, but I was told that I should have skipped the first and went straight to the second game. This was after I aired my opinion of it to people. Without realising, this helped me with a medal for the following month. I had to play games with the letter Z in them, which was blind luck. I really didn't realise I'd done that. All I obtained from this game was completing story missions and a couple of collectibles. I will give it another go in the future, but at the time I played it, it just wasn't for me. I did knock 170G off the total balance though, bringing the remainder down to 3,870. I only put about 3 hours into the game, and most of that was me just lost, not knowing where I was to go, as the mission structure feels like pot luck if you're going to the right area or not. Maybe I just needed to pay a bit more attention to it, but I was just kind of hoping for a normal level by level action game of some kind. Anything with Kojima's name on it can be hit or miss, can't it? I needed to speed this challenge back up, as going for those medals at the same time had really took its toll. So I jumped back in with some more kids movie tie-in junk. Starting up Spiderwick Chronicles, I was surprised. It felt pretty well made, and doing the missions inside the house felt like it might have been a bit of fun as a casual little romp. That was until the combat started, and I realised it was never-ending spawns of enemies, and the game never told you where to go or what to do. I actually had to resort to a walkthrough a good few times just to know where the game wanted me to go. The map itself is rather small, but the sheer number of the little goblin things the game throws at you slows you down trying to get anywhere. You play as 3 different characters and have to keep switching between them. It's not on the fly though. You have to walk back to your house each time and stand next to them to swap. There is a 4th side character, but he is only used for a couple of missions. It's things where like you have to go into the walls of the house to kill cockroaches and find objects. He's like a half man, half mouse thing. This game is weird. For the longest time, some characters don't even have weapons. And when they do, the combat is either spray the goblins away or hit them with a blunt object. Can I class a fencing sword as a blunt object? I think I can. You also get spells to help fight, but you have to swap your weapon out for a net to catch fairies to be able to use them. The thing is, if it's your first time catching one of these fairies, you have to paint a picture of it in a notebook. These sections are timed and you don't get long at all, but it doesn't pause the game, so if any of the perpetual spawning enemies hit you, you have to stop, kill them and start again. These fairies also class as one of the collectibles of the game. Others include ball bearings, goblin teeth and fairy fruit. Luckily the game isn't very long and you can sort of see what you're missing by using your notebook. I was able to knock out all of the game's achievements in about 10 hours. It is an easy one to go for if anyone wants the points, but I wouldn't really recommend it. It does have a multiplayer mode with achievements tied to it though. These are all super easy, but it will require a second controller for one of the achievements. Hitting the full 1000G on this game brings us down to a needed 2,870. What do you play after you finish a game based on a terrible kids movie? You play another one of course. This time the Chronicles of Narnia Prince Caspian. Another film I haven't seen. After a bit of research online, this was quick and easy, but it didn't say how awful the game was. It's a game by Traveller's Tales, you know, the Lego people, or just TT as they're known these days. Unsurprisingly, it plays a bit like a Lego game, with a different coat of paint. You always have one other character minimum with you, and you can switch between them to use different abilities. It is level based, but each chapter has its own little hub area, which branches off into different levels. The combat is mostly melee, but you do get bows and arrows. The problem is, just like the very early Lego games, you can't tell if your hits are connecting. Also, you spend a lot of time playing as characters like dwarves or mice, who have really short swords and you face full-size men or taller guys with a longer reach. The other downside here is there's a lot of random timed aspects to missions. These can take a couple of minutes to work out what you're supposed to do, but by then the timer is expired, causing a restart. Once you know what you're doing, they're all pretty easy though. I can't say this game is hard in any way, but it's still a slog due to all its flaws. It's super ugly too. The achievements are basically finish the game, find all the collectibles, upgrade your health, and play the first mission 15 times in co-op. Well, it doesn't need to be the first one, but that's the quickest strategy. So yet again, if you want the full 1000G, you're going to need a second controller. What is it with these kids games and needing 2 controllers? Do they expect the kids to play with parents or something? I feel sorry for the parents if that's the case. Weirdly, I think I've met more people that have actually played this game than seen the movie. Probably because the game doesn't make you want to. I did net the full 1000G, and this lowered the remaining score to 1,870. I was getting close now, but running out of ideas of what to play. This took me around 8 hours to finish the full list of achievements, so not too bad. By this point though, that kind of time sink felt like a lifetime. This is where I thought I needed to take another visit to the land of Telltale Games. I've played the majority of their games that I have available, and now due to the store shutdown, I'm not sure if you can even still download the extra episodes for games with any of the Season Pass discs. Luckily, I had the complete adventure of Minecraft Story Mode sitting on the shelf, which has the full game and all the DLC on the disc. This was a bit of a longer Telltale experience, as it contains 8 episodes compared to the usual 6. Again, this is more like an interactive TV show, where you mostly spend your time looking for items, talking to people and making dialogue choices. This is meant to make every playthrough different, but it never really changes much in these games. I actually didn't know what I was getting into myself with this one. I'm not a big fan of Minecraft, but I have played it in the past. I thought it's not really a game known for its story, but we can see what happens. This one was set out differently to the other games. The first 4 episodes are one contained story, but when that finishes, each episode is a self-contained story, and they all get kind of tied together in the end. To be honest, I actually liked this approach. I wasn't expecting the random places the stories would go. Really didn't have my money on a murder mystery with a serial killer showing up. I enjoyed this way more than I was expecting. Playing the first main story, I had no technical issues, but as it was getting into the more singular stories, I started to get some of the same issues I had with The Wolf Among Us. Mostly just mismatched audio, or sometimes no audio playing at all. I forgot to check if this had subtitles, as this really would help me know what was going on at some points. Again, this is most likely better on other systems. The achievements on this one were straightforward again, just about making different decisions at points, but you can always rewind episodes and do everything you've missed. There's only missable achievements in the first 3 episodes too, so after them it's just sit back and enjoy the game. What's great about this though, well, for the challenge at least, as it breaks the usual 1000G. Where it contains all the DLC, the game has a very random number of 1375G available. You could have guessed from how easy these types of games are, I did get all the score available. With this game done and out of the way, the end of the challenge was in touching distance, with only 495G to go. Minecraft Story Mode though took me around 14 hours to complete. Now this is where the Gamerscore actually became a little dangerous. I had to make sure I could line it up perfectly to unlock the achievement I wanted to cross the finish line. I remembered I bought Indianapolis 500 Evolution off eBay a while back and intended to play it during this challenge, so I hooked up the American Xbox again to give this US exclusive a go. You know what, I wish I hadn't. Not only was this game harder than I was expecting, I was also on a bit of a time limit now. I had to get this challenge finished before the end of the month, as the TA medals were going to mess it up. If you aren't aware of this game, it's just a retro IndyCar racing game. You do races to earn money, to upgrade cars, rinse and repeat. When I say this game is harder than I thought, I meant it was going to take a bit of time to get used to it, and the Gamerscore coming in quick dries up rather fast. I should have played this one near the start of the challenge. I would have had a lot more patience with it. I did somehow scrounge 190G out of it from winning a couple of races and buying certain car parts. I completed the first season, and that was enough for me. The game handles so bad, and the AI really like to lock wheels with you and spin you out for no reason. Even on easy, the computer cars will always be within under a second of you. I needed to spend more time at looking at what upgrades I should be putting on the cars, rather than just buying the priciest, as that didn't seem to be doing the job. But this is one I'll come back to. It's not the worst racer I've ever played. This 190G chipped the total required down to 305G. I only played this game for a couple of hours, so I couldn't knock what I got out of it really. Then pesky TA medals had changed again, and one was to play quiz or educational games. I opted for the former as I still had the American Xbox set up. I thought, why not give You Don't Know Jack a go? It's a party quiz game with what can only be described as a frat boy sense of humour. It keeps making jokes just edgy enough to give it a teen rating, but not enough to push it into an R. It's full of strange adverts for things like fistable bowling or baby waterbeds. It does make jokes quite relevant about how R. Kelly was a pervert, strangely followed by a question about P. Diddy. The problem is the game just isn't as funny as it thinks it is, and it really starts to grate on you. I also found out why this never left the States in this iteration. All the questions are about American celebrities, brands and news. Since I'm not from there, I didn't know what most of the stuff they were talking about was. This makes a quiz game rather difficult. Well, if you're playing it properly it would. All the questions come up in the same order per episode, so you can just look up the answers online if you want to, just to make it an easier experience. I was getting worried about random achievements popping throughout this one, as I had to be super careful not to go over 15G away from the target. I got achievements for things like watching the credits, a certain number of questions on topics correct, and completing an episode without a wrong answer. After playing this for a couple of hours, I made the conscious decision to stop this one at 240G, as this left me with a total of 65G to go. I needed now to find 50G to bring it down to the correct score I needed to set it up for the achievement I wanted to pop to hit that million bang on. I spent a bit of time checking through what was available, and I realised I still had an easy game I could have played earlier on in the challenge, but forgot I had it. This was a total blessing in disguise though, as every achievement was worth bang on 50G, and the first one could be snagged in a couple of minutes. So I rushed over the shelf and dug out SpongeBob Hero Pants. After a brief intro, you only need to run a small bit into the level and grab the first collectible page, and there it was, 50G. The time had come. I could get the achievement I wanted to. I was about to finally break the million, after too many years that I was willing to admit. I started this on 360 launch day. It's now 2024. But who cares? We'd finally got there. It was time. For the million, I decided to choose an achievement due to its name and the particular franchise. I wanted to unlock the "Would you like to play a game" achievement in Saw 2, Flesh and Blood. Firstly, I'll address the name. I thought it was a bit ironic to be asked if I wanted to play anything after playing so many games. The answer would have been no. I want a break at the moment if I was asked it. And secondly, for years I followed another YouTuber on their journey to the 1 million Gamerscore. Their favourite franchise is Saw, so it seemed fitting as a little tribute. You know who you are if you're watching this. And with that, it was done. The million Gamerscore had been achieved. So here it goes. Was it worth it? All this time I've poured into Xbox games over the years. The answer is yes. It was. Not because this goal has been reached, but because of Gamerscore. I've played so many different games that I would have usually steered clear of, which some have ended up being some of my favourite experiences in years. I believe it's made me a better gamer, and I've had to push myself to beat games on difficulties I wouldn't have before. But back to the challenge. What have I taken away from doing the final 15k with only 360 games? For what would have taken me no more than about 2 hours using the super quick completions that are available on the Xbox store these days, took me roughly 185 hours to achieve. That's just game time. I did this over about 3 months. The majority of what I've played is what people would have mocked you for back in the 360 days for doing easy games just for Gamerscore. I feel even more that the system itself has just been degraded to a pay-to-win model in recent years, and the idea of having a large number attached to your name doesn't actually mean anything anymore. I went into the Xbox One generation with over 400,000 Gamerscore earned solely on Xbox 360, PC, and a small bit of Windows Phone thrown in. I know people these days that have done that in a year. I'm still proud of hitting this milestone, as it's not something that most people ever reach. It doesn't mean anything, but it was a personal goal and I'm happy I've ticked it off the bucket list. This is the longest gaming challenge I've ever completed for a video. I may have bitched and moaned, but overall I really enjoyed it. I just really enjoy talking about achievements in general. Due to this, I'd love to do a follow-up video talking about the journey as a whole, the highs, the lows, the hardest games, most fun, all that kind of stuff. I've never done a Q&A on this channel, but if you do have any questions about the journey or achievements in general, just drop them in the comment section below, and I'll try to answer them in an upcoming video. I would love to know what you guys would have played for the final 15k, if you were to be doing this with 360 games. Anyway, if you made it this far, feel free to like, comment, subscribe, all the good stuff. I'm gonna go play some video games now. Bye!